we're going to head to the Eastern Conference right now. Big buzzkill even before they began the festivities. If you're looking for competition, you did not get that in the lead up to this game between the Knickerbockers and the Miami Heat. And the Butler did it. The Butler did it by not playing. He was out. I was praising Jimmy Butler that he's unlike these other NBA players, that he will play. He will be a decoy. He will go out there. And then he did not suit up. He was on the bench wearing some designer outfit, but he was not playing. An ankle injury. Out of an abundance of caution, the Miami Heat said, we're going to rest him, plus we got a couple days off before the next game. And so we're not going to spend a ton of time breaking down the Knicks-Heat game because of that. It was not a fair fight, so we won't do that. But we will have the NBA grab bag. Woohoo! NBA grab bag. Now, before we get to the grab bag, though, Miami and New York, if you didn't watch the game, Jalen Brunson, a terrible first half and a monster second half. He had 23 of his 30 points in the second half as the New York Knicks had to come from behind. They were trailing going to the fourth quarter to a Miami team without Jimmy Butler, but the Knicks win 111-105 at Madison Square Garden, the Mecca. So the series is tied now 1-1 heading back to South Beach, and that'll be up this weekend. So let us discuss the question. What stands out here from the Knicks beating the Heat without the Butler? So I've got bedraggled, Liberty, and slaughter. And we will combine all of these things together, and we are going to make some overpriced courtside seats. I saw all the, LA's got their own list of losers that buy those front row tickets, but New York's got a different class, a different breed of morons that buy those front row tickets. So anyway, my first thought here, number one, Jalen Brunson taking full advantage of the mea culpa. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean by that, Brunson started this game sluggish. It looked like the backup that had been in Dallas before last season when he had his breakout launching pad performance and leapfrogged up the NBA hierarchy in the postseason. He's continued this year. But in the first half, Jalen Brunson, I was watching my TV. I was like, wait, this looks like the old Jalen Brunson. He was 1 of 6 in the first half. He had 7 points and just not into it. And then all of a sudden, in the second half, he went afterburner is what he did in the second half, and he had some help. Now, Josh Hart, he's an average NBA player, Josh Hart, he had a bunch of points as well, but 10 of his 14 points by Josh Hart in the fourth quarter. The Knicks also got Julius Randle back. He had 25 points, but he was a decoy down the stretch in the fourth quarter. He was a decoy, and he had no shots, did not even attempt a field goal. Julius Randle did in the fourth quarter. He had 2 points from the charity stripe, and that's it. So the sound you heard about the time the Heat-Knicks game ended was it was an exhale situation is what it was, because that game was anybody's game going to the fourth quarter. And had the Knicks lost, then if the Knicks had lost to a Heat team without Jimmy Butler in their own building, Tom Thibodeau would have been court-martialed. He would have been crucified and tarred and feathered and run out of town. But it didn't happen. So for Miami, you mentioned it was a winnable game. It was anybody's game going to the fourth quarter. Anybody had a shot there going to the fourth quarter. And then you're like, well, wait a minute here. The Heat, on cue, they were the team that was bedraggled. They played bedraggled basketball down the stretch. Who goofed? I've got to know. So watching this, you anticipated if it was a close game in the final couple minutes, this would not go well. But it really started at the 7-minute mark of the fourth quarter. That's a lot of time. That's a lot of time. So the Heat were leading by 6. They're up 93-87 with 7 minutes to go in the game. And over the final stretch, the New York Knicks locking down the Miami Heat, and the Heat could not get any offense. They shot 33%. The starters, Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Bam Adebayo, Caleb Martin, and Kevin Love, the washed-up carcass of Kevin Love, combined to shoot 2 of 8 and the Knicks starters dominated that. So New York gets the win. So it's a best of 5. Miami has home court advantage now going back, and if Jimmy Butler plays, the Heat will advance. If he doesn't play, then the Knicks have more than just a puncher's chance. They should be the team that advances. It's not that hard. It's an Occam's razor situation. Now, page number 2 here. How do you unpack? We're going to play the NBA grab bag. Grab bag! Grab bag! NBA grab bag! All right, so how do you unpack the reaction to Joel Embiid winning the Most Valuable Player award? So this was a biblical reaction. It was like many in the NBA community believe that order has been restored to the NBA and the totem pole of success in the NBA. And it's almost like the voters for the MVP award were like, all right, well, just stop your crying. We'll give Embiid the MVP. Stop your bitching. Stop your complaining. We'll give your guy the MVP. Now, I have an unpopular opinion. I mentioned it in a previous hour of the show, but I'm going to go into more detail right now. That Joel Embiid had a fine year for the Sixers, but he was not the most valuable player under the measurable criteria that we often use to decide these things. Not your feelings. We're not worried about your feelings, but over the actual data, Nikola Jokic was more valuable to the Denver Nuggets than Embiid was to the Sixers. And I'm going to make my point here, right? And the unpopular opinion is Nikola Jokic should have won the MVP award, and I'll tell you why, right? He was better. He had a better year for the Nuggets. Now, we've talked about voter fatigue, and that's a thing and all that, and Jokic has won this award quite often. But that aside, right, he was the player that had the better year side by side. Jokic was more efficient. He created more offense for his team. And if you do the blind taste test and you've got player A and player B, there's 11 criteria that most knowledgeable basketball people look at to decide the most valuable player award. And if you go by the 11 criteria, side by side, Joel Embiid had the edge in 3 categories, and Jokic was ahead in 8 categories. So I have it 8-3 on my scorecard in favor of Jokic, but he didn't win it. They gave it to Joel Embiid. But if you look at it, Nikola Jokic was better in rebounds, assists, steals, field goal percentage, three-point shooting, offensive rating. Joel Embiid had the edge by a wide margin in points. He took more shots, blocked shots. That was close. Defensive rating, a slight less than 1 point edge, as it was 0.8 advantage for Joel Embiid in that. So another key indicator, another key indicator in the NBA grab bag for the MVP, the modern NBA, since so many of these ball players are lazy. They don't show up to work. Like you don't show up to work after a while, they fire you. In the NBA, they encourage you not to show up and play. You've got to save yourself for the playoffs so you can get hurt in the playoffs. So with that as the backdrop, let's do the side-by-side. Joel Embiid missed 16 games for Philadelphia. Nikola Jokic missed 13 games, so it's pretty close. It's pretty close. Philadelphia, when Embiid played, had a .652 winning percentage. When Joel Embiid did not play, they had a .688 winning percentage. They were tangibly better without Embiid by the winning percentage. Now, how about the Nuggets? When Denver had Jokic, they had a .696 winning percentage. When they didn't have Nikola Jokic in the lineup, they had a losing record. They were 5-8. That's a .385 winning percentage, and that's called checkmate in favor of the Denver Nuggets star. Now, the other problem with Jokic is he plays in Denver. That's flyover country and then some. Like flyover country for most people who are the elitists that live on the East and the West Coast is the Midwest. But the Rocky Mountains, forget about that. They don't even consider that flyover country. That's just there. That's like a nuisance on the map for a lot of these people who vote. But the reason Joel Embiid won is because of the Liberty Valance. Give me liberty. Give me Liberty Valance here. And if you're not familiar with that, when the legend becomes the fact, you print the legend, or in this case, you vote for the legend. And the legend, Joel Embiid, was better. He wasn't, but some bombastic blowhards on television said, oh, he was, and they had a conniption fit, and they pounded the table, and they made a big commotion, and so Joel Embiid was able to win. But in the playoffs, also, Jokic has been better than Joel Embiid as he's dominating the head-to-head, side-by-side comparison. But again, the MVP is a regular season award, so we will not talk about that because that's taboo. But it's continuing in the playoffs. Final point on the NBA grab bag, a couple of other things. So let's get to one other thing here for now because I am on time, MALLER, by the clock, for the clock, plausibly all about the clock. But I want to talk about what happened in Memphis. Now, Shams Charania, NBA insider Shams Charania, tells us that the Grizzlies have informed pending free agent Dillon Brooks that he will not be brought back under any circumstance. And he is free to roam around the country. He's been in Memphis. I believe he's the longest tenured player with the Grizzlies. And he played the role of the heel, a trash-talking instigator for the Grizzlies, but he will no longer be doing that. So the question here, what is your viewpoint on the Grizzlies putting the kibosh and pointing the finger at Dillon Brooks? So I found this amusing because we have learned that during the season, the Grizzlies offered Dillon Brooks a contract extension. So up until late in the season, they were on board with Dillon Brooks. You're telling me because he happened to goof on LeBron James in the playoffs, that's why you're getting rid of him? I find that ridiculous. I find that farcical, all right, is what I find that. There are many reasons that Dillon Brooks this story's been leaked by the Grizzlies, but the main reason is because they can't get rid of Ja Morant. Ja Morant is the one that put the team in purgatory, but shh, you're not supposed to say that, right? Ja Morant's the franchise. He was the one that decided to be a vlogger and go to Shotgun Willie's and document all of the strippers and the guns and the whole thing. That wasn't Dillon Brooks. I didn't see Dillon Brooks there. I saw Ja Morant at Shotgun Willie's. Guns, strippers, and the gram. The big three. How about Steven Adams? He didn't show up to the playoffs. He was hurt. You think that's a mitigating factor on what happened to Memphis? Can't bring that up. But Dillon Brooks, you got to have a fall guy. And Dillon Brooks is the perfect fall guy. He's unpopular because he talked the talk and he didn't back it up. He didn't walk the walk. And so this became, for the Grizzlies, it's a ritual slaughter is what it is. But I will guarantee you, for those of you like, oh, Dillon Brooks is not going to find a job in the NBA. He'll be fine. He'll have multiple offers in the NBA. He is an acquired taste, but you don't mind a guy like that on your team. He's a mosquito. He's a pest. He's the kind of guy, he's an irritant. And he's not the reason that the Grizzlies did not end up victorious in the opening round of the playoffs.